Dr. John Gorman is a name you probably don't recognise, but you may owe your life to him, and possibly those of your children and grandchildren too. He's saved millions of babies right around the world, and while it's taken more than half a century, he's finally being honoured.
To the passer-by, this 93-year-old seems unremarkable. He's unfamiliar, unassuming. You'd probably walk straight past him. But Dr. John Gorman is far from ordinary. This old man has saved millions of lives.
A very quiet, humble genius.
That is a terrific feeling of having done some good.
He's the greatest living Australian you've never heard of, who's made a global impact.
It's one of the great advances of modern medicine. It took a terrible, horrible condition and basically eliminated it.
And he's not done yet.
Yeah, there are millions of lives we're not saving.
So where exactly do you come from?
Way over there, across the Pacific Ocean. We had to go to Fiji and then Hawaii.
John Gorman, the boy from Bendigo, became a doctor in Melbourne, and now with wife Julia calls the Californian coast home.
I was always fascinated by America. I thought America was the place to be. That's where the action was, and I couldn't wait to get to New York and get my Pontiac, you know.
Aside from the cars, there was a big, bold world of medicine waiting for him. From obstetrics to paediatrics, Dr. Gorman tried it all. But he found his calling in pathology and one of America's top hospitals.
So I got totally hooked on laboratory medicine, and it's so interesting, and you know more about medicine and disease than anyone else in a way.
It was the 1950s, and there was a disease that baffled the world, especially this young doctor. An insidious condition that caused a mother to kill her own unborn child, rhesus disease.
The mother would be perfectly healthy and say 35 weeks and have a stillbirth out of the blue, and it was very scary.
A disease that causes agonising heartache. Nicole Mannix-Power knows that pain.
They put the Doppler on and there was no heartbeat. So I had to go home and tell my two gorgeous boys that their sister didn't come home. There was nothing else.
A torturous scenario that played out for generations.
I'd lost 4 children at the time I found out I had the NTD, the rhesus disease.
A mystery illness that was killing tens of thousands of babies a year in the 1960s. So what makes Rh disease so insidious?
I think the fact that it occurs in a perfectly healthy mother, and they happen to have these antibodies that cross the placenta and harm the fetus.
So the mother unknowingly kills her own baby?
Yes, that's one way to put it. There's no symptoms from the mother, but the baby comes out very anemic and maybe with heart failure and very poor condition. Some of the babies are not that sick, but some of them are very sick, and they may die neonatal death.
Rh disease occurs when a mother has a negative blood type and her unborn child's blood is positive. When the baby's red blood cells cross the placenta, the mother makes antibodies, which then attack the baby as if it's a virus. While a mother's first child is usually unaffected, subsequent children are at risk. 1 in 10 fetal deaths were due to Rh disease as recently as the 1960s, because 17% of women have Rh negative blood.
The presence of circulating antibody
A light bulb moment struck Dr. Gorman
and may completely inhibit the immune response to the relevant antigen.
when reading a paragraph in a book by fellow Australian Nobel laureate Howard Florey, who contributed to the discovery of penicillin.
I knew immediately and within a few minutes that this would prevent hemolytic disease.
Dr. Gorman's idea, inspired by Florey, was to inject women with the very poison that was killing their babies to stop them making antibodies themselves, a sort of anti-vaccine. It's quite the paradox, isn't it, that the solution is the killer antibody itself.
Absolutely, yes. It's you could say, John, you're crazy. You're going to give the same thing that's killing the babies.
So there's baby's heartbeat. You can hear that.
A discovery that changed the course of history. Dr. Danny Chalice is a specialist obstetrician at Sydney's Royal Hospital for Women.
Pregnancy is going really well.
Amazing, thank you.
It took a condition that was very difficult to treat, that caused hundreds of deaths of otherwise healthy babies, huge amounts of suffering amongst families, and basically eliminated the condition overnight. In my view, he's one of the greats of medicine and one of the great unsung heroes.
It became known as Anti-D, the serum named Rogam in the US. Joining forces with obstetrician colleague Vincent Frieda, the theory had to be tested. That led to another crazy idea: inject volunteer jailbirds at Sing Sing, the maximum security prison made famous by Hollywood and the blues. The trial was a success, but that was on men. The necessary next step, trickier still.
He needed a guinea pig, in other words.
So, Kath, let's take you back to 1964. You're in England. Your brother-in-law, John Gorman, he's been experimenting this serum on some male prisoners, but he needs to test it on a woman. That woman was you.
Because I was convenient, I was related, and I was pregnant.
Kath Gorman also had Rh negative blood, but John Gorman was in New York, his sister-in-law in England. And so began a clandestine mission to get Anti-D to Kath's doctors. But sending human serum across the Atlantic wasn't exactly legal.
When we got to customs and that at the airport, we had quite a battle with them to try and get the serum through.
Well, it was an unusual package, wasn't it?
Well, it was a foam, blue and white box foam with the lid sealed with sellotape. And that was sort of how it came, and it sort of, it was quite comical.
We were lucky we got it there in time, and I think we were kind of breaking all kinds of export laws. We just found afterwards it wasn't authorized to ship an untested drug.
Kath Gorman was the first woman to receive a dose of Anti-D anywhere in the world. It worked. Her son, Angus Gorman, became a global medical marvel.
I didn't classify it as any big deal. To us it was a baby that was well.
What was he like as a baby, Angus?
He was gorgeous. He was big. He roared like a bull. That's why he got called Angus.
Here's the wall of shame and call it. Yes, family photo.
Dr. Gorman's nephew was the very first baby saved by his discovery.
I think they had a very clear understanding of the risks and the benefits, and that's why they were very cooperative.
Very often with vaccines or new developments, there's always everything.
News spread quickly. Dr. Gorman appeared on the Today Show with Barbara Walters.
It's been used in male volunteers and now in mothers for 3 years.
Australia embraced the treatment, the first country to offer it free to all women who needed it. The sad irony, Anti-D was initially sourced from antibodies in the blood of mothers who'd already lost a child. Some had lost many babies.
Well, it was a revolution in medicine. No one knew why their babies were dying. And in 1966, that all stopped. I'll start crying.
Robin Barlow was the RH project coordinator for Red Cross.
The 71 women that we recruited all said the same thing. It was like a chorus. I don't want it happening to anyone else. And then now, after all these years, we're coming up to 60 years, the treatment's never changed. It still depends on the blood donor giving blood, women and men who volunteer to have antibody given to them. Yesterday's miracle becomes tomorrow's commonplace, taken for granted as part of the ordinary order of things. And that's good.
That's Dr. Gorman's enormous legacy. But more than 60 years since Dr. Gorman's light bulb moment, he's never received proper recognition from Australia. Until now.
Well, congratulations, John, on behalf of Australia. Thank you for everything that you have done. The millions of lives, literally, that you have saved. For every mother and father who's got to hold their baby in their arms. You have made such an extraordinary difference, and we are so proud of you. You certainly deserve this highest of honours that Australia can give, because we are so proud that you are an Australian who's made a contribution not just to our nation, but an extraordinary contribution to the whole world.
That's something else, isn't it?
Here we go.
Dr. Gorman couldn't make it across the Pacific, so we brought Australia to him.
Dr. John Grant Gorman is appointed an Honorary Companion in the General Division of the Order of Australia for eminent service to medicine in co-discovering and pioneering a treatment for rhesus disease for worldwide benefit to humanity.
An AC, the highest honour down under, an Australian knighthood.
The silent throng who I represent in today's presentation ceremony are the millions of babies born healthy.
Dr. Gorman is using his moment to shine a light on his next plan.
The utilisation of the ROGAM is virtually 100% in the Western world. The nursing protocols in the labour room are now very, very strict. Every mother has to be tested for RH. In the undeveloped world, only 50% of the RH negative mothers are being protected. It turns out every year there will be 160,000 mortality in babies. But even worse, there's going to be 100,000 babies with brain damage. And my interest now is, in the very short time I got left here, is to see if we can take care of the others. We've got something that will save all these lives and prevent all this brain damage. It's not being used. It just costs money.
And he's 93 and he's thriving, so...
Dr. Gorman has been working closely with WIRE, a not-for-profit on the same mission to eradicate RH disease.
They know what needs to be done in these countries, and they want to get going, but it would require billions of dollars.
A call to arms to our billionaires from one of medicine's greats, and a pledge from across the Pacific.
This is an important next mission. We could call it Dr. Gorman's second innings. So I'd certainly like to sit down and discuss with your colleagues how we might be able to help with introductions with the World Health Organization, other national institutions and aid agencies to see what can be done.
Hooray! Like so many around the world, for Kath Gorman, her family is everything.
How many children did you end up having?
I produced 6. and we adopted Ian, which gave us 7.
Frank didn't quite get his football team, did he?
No, he didn't, and I didn't care.
But it may not have looked like this or this big if it wasn't for her brother-in-law, his bold idea and a brazen plan. A humble hero who changed history and gave millions the priceless gift that is family.
If you had your time again, what would you do differently?
Andrew, at 93, I look back on my life and say this. Sorry. Oh boy. No, I look back on my life and no way I could have had a more interesting life, Andrew.
What made you emotional there?
I don't know. I really don't know. Just the thought of my life, I think, of being so lucky.
What a beautiful, humble man. It's long overdue, but thank you, Dr. Gorman, from all of us for what you've contributed to medicine.